Hey everyone, and welcome back to Dallas Cowboys coverage. I'm going to break down all the Cowboys roster cuts, everything that's been going on over this crazy week of roster cuts, practice squad, new signings. I'm going to go over it all right now. So, let's get right into it. So, first, I want to talk about the guys who were either waived or released just outright. Completely, they are gone for now. So, I have my full list here. Gotta check. Just to get all the categories straight, but I'll start with those. So Storey Jackson will be the first guy. So linebacker was solid in the preseason, showed some flashes. I think one of the bigger surprises that he was just waived. He will not be brought back, so he is off the team. Also, Josiah Bronson, defensive tackle, didn't have a whole lot of reps. He was never going to make this roster. He is also off the team completely. Big Kat Bryant was waived. I think sort of a fan favorite, maybe because of the name. Showed some flashes in the preseason. He, again, though, will not be making this roster. This is a big one. Ben DiNucci at quarterback. Very interesting here. He, I think, had his best offseason. For years, I'd been fine with just letting him go, but showed some flashes this preseason. I was impressed with him, so a little bit surprised that he is gone. He will not be coming back. So, yeah, a little bit of a surprise on that one. All right, moving right along. James Empey, the undrafted free agent center from BYU, showed some flashes, especially in the first preseason game. He was the highest graded offensive lineman. Thought he might find a spot on the practice squad. He did not, though. Moving along. Braylon Jones, depth guard, was never going to make the team, and he will not be making the practice squad either. All right. Amon Simon, another undrafted free agent lineman. Didn't really see hardly anything from him. He's not going to be making this team. And I think that's it. Two different ones. Aaron Shanklin and Isaac Taylor-Stuart were both designated as waived injured. What that means is that they are waived. They have to go through waivers. Anyone can claim them. But if they're not claimed, they revert back to injured reserve. We saw this with a couple players earlier in the offseason. But another thing that can happen is what's called an injury settlement, where the team basically agrees you can go hit free agency. They settle out the contract because if they are placed on injured reserve before the season starts, they are ineligible to play all year, whether for the Cowboys or any other team. So we could see some injury settlements. I already heard Aaron Shanklin. They did agree to one, so he will not be on the team. I haven't heard on Isaac Taylor-Stuart, but we saw this with guys like Ryan Nall earlier in the offseason. There were other guys too. Jeremy Sprinkle was released. All these guys came to injury settlements. They are not on the team anymore. All right, so that's all the guys I believe that were just straight up waived. Will not be on this team. Now let's get to the practice squad guys, starting with Sean McEwen. Tight end, widely, was expected to make the team. He was on the roster last year, but with the emergence of Jake Ferguson and especially undrafted free agent Peyton Hendershot, he does miss out on the roster. Will be on the practice squad, though, so one of your better practice squad options there at tight end. Alec Lindstrom, undrafted free agent center, showed some flashes in the preseason. It was enough to earn him a spot on the practice squad. We'll see what he can do, of course, on the practice squad. Tyler Coyle, really liked him. He was great in the preseason. Really good safety depth, but, couldn't keep them all, so he will land on the practice squad. Isaac Alarcon is still exempt with the International Player Pathway Program, so he will be the 17th man on the normal 16-man practice squad. So showed some flashes, wasn't great in the last game, but he's on there for free, so obviously, might as well. All right. Aviante Collins, another depth tackle, sort of impressed in the preseason, though, so he was also able to do enough to stick onto the practice squad. Malik Davis, a lot of people really liked him, myself included. He was one of my top preseason players, won my player of the week for week 1, and he just was great all preseason, consistently good runner. A lot of people thought he might beat out Rico Dowdle, didn't happen, but he is clear, he's cleared waivers, and he is another member of this practice squad. Look for him to be one of the game day elevation players at points throughout this season, as he is for sure one of your better options on the practice squad and your 4th running back in the organization. Let's see, Dontario Drummond, and one of the undrafted free agent wide receivers. There were quite a few of them, hard to keep them straight. TJ Vasher, a name I forgot to mention. He was cut in the earlier stage of cuts, so he also, at the surprise of many Cowboys fans, will not be making this team. So unfortunate there, but Dontario Drummond will. Had some flashes in the preseason, had some good plays, so he'll be sticking on the practice squad. All right. Will Grier. Okay, so the quarterbacks are definitely an interesting one. I'll talk about them two together. Will Grier and Cooper Rush were both waived/released. Cooper Rush was just released. He didn't have to go through waivers. So both of them land back on the practice squad. They cleared waivers, and here they are. So Dak is the only quarterback on the roster right now. Definitely an interesting situation on that front. Different for sure. One of them will be elevated, I expect, for week 1. Well, for sure, one of them will be at least elevated, but I think that's kind of the route they're going. Maybe they're not super sold on either one of them, want to kind of extend the competition a little bit. So, but look to week 1, one of them will be the practice squad elevation player, so they'll be on the team week 1 against the Bucs. Same thing with, I think, kicker Brett Maher. He was also released. Again, these are all procedural moves. They're always coming back. It was just to get guys like on injured reserve. I'll talk about that later. But I think he'll also be one of those elevation players. Again, maybe they're not completely sold on Brett Maher. He's the only kicker right now, but not technically on the team. But of course, will play week 1, barring some signing that we don't know about. All right, so that's together. Malik Jefferson, I like him. I've liked him coming out of Texas. A guy that I wanted the Cowboys to draft back in, I believe, 2018 now. It's been a while. But showed some flashes in the preseason. I like keeping him on the practice squad as a good veteran depth linebacker option. All right. Braylon Smith, another wide receiver, one of the best players in the preseason, especially in that last game. Some real flashes. Again, some people thought he might make the team, but there's just a lot of bodies in that wide receiver room. So he does make the practice squad. Good for him. I think, again, he could be a potential practice squad call-up player later in the season. All right. Mika Tafua initially made the practice squad, but is now been released from the practice squad due to the signing of Jason Peters. So Jason Peters, I'll come back to him because I want to spend a little more time talking about him. So just pause that for now. Juanyeh Thomas, another good safety option, had a good preseason. He'll be on the practice squad, along with Tyler Coyle, who I mentioned earlier. Carlos Watkins, back on the practice squad. I like him a lot. He was obviously a starter last season. One of the most surprising cuts for sure. Glad to see him back on the practice squad again. A likely practice squad call-up player for some point in the season. Injuries happen, stuff happens. This is the reason you have the practice squad, and this is the reason that players are now eligible to be elevated from the practice squad. I think really good rule change there. So I think that is it for the practice squad, concluding with Jason Peters. Was recently signed, longtime Eagle, most recently Bear, future Hall of Fame left tackle. He's 40 years old now, so really at the twilight of his career, but I think just an excellent signing because even though I think they will roll with Tyler Smith starting at left tackle, which I think is the right thing to do at this point to try to just get him to the experience, but if he struggles, if there's any more injuries, God forbid, you have a good option at left tackle in Jason Peters, good veteran option. Obviously not the all-pro, Pro Bowl player he used to be, but still a very solid option. And I think is just an upgrade. That's my word for it. Better than Josh Ball, better than Matt Waletzko, any of your other options. So I like this signing a lot just because you have depth now. A little less scary if Tyler Smith struggles, if there's any more injuries, you have a reliable guy to fill in until Tyron Smith hopefully is able to come back around December time. I like this signing a lot. I think really, really good by the Cowboys. So he will start on the practice squad, give him a chance to get ramped up, get used to the offense. Probably won't be active for the first week or two, but look for him again to be a frequent game day call-up, and eventually, most likely, will be added permanently to the 53-man roster. So that concludes the practice squad. I'm looking at this list here. And I'm just going to talk about some of the guys who made the team, maybe weren't locks, and just talk about what kind of role they'll be having. So, starting, no quarterbacks, running backs, Rico Dowdle ended up making the roster. I think he was the favorite for most of the season, or most of the preseason, and he will be running back 3 on this team. Wide receiver, a lot of guys. KaVontae Turpin, will start with him. He became a lock after his amazing preseason Week 2 performance. He'll be a return specialist and gadget player, I'd say, occasional wide receiver. So really interested to see what he can do. Happy he's on this team. I think really one of your better players, at least in terms of skill set and game changer players for sure. Dennis Houston also made this team, another one of the undrafted free agent wide receivers. He had an excellent offseason, great preseason. He's a valuable player, not only at wide receiver, but on special teams. He's on this team. Simi Fehoko and Noah Brown, two of the Noah Brown, I'd say, veteran options. He might be wide receiver 3, start the regular season, yeah. Preseason, I wouldn't mind. Regular season, don't love that for sure, but it's going to be how it's going to start with Michael Gallup, James Washington hurt. It's just how it's got to be for now, so don't love it, but he's on the team, Simi Fehoko as well, but all of these guys impressed in the offseason, so we'll all be looking to carve out their own roles as the regular season moves on. At tight end, Peyton Hendershot and Jake Ferguson, along with, of course, Dalton Schultz. Jake Ferguson was very good, very consistent throughout the offseason and preseason, but Peyton Hendershot, I'm just going to be combining their names, I guess, was very impressive, especially in that last preseason game. One of the players of the game for me had the big, exciting helmet come off, sort of Jason Witten vibes there. But he was also consistent all preseason. Very happy and comfortable with him as tight end 3. We'll see what both of the rookies can do behind veteran Dalton Schultz. As for the offensive line, Matt Farniok will be backing up the center and guard positions. Obviously, we talked about Josh Ball and Matt Waletzko on this team. Thin, I think, is fair to say, as your starting offensive line is going to be Tyler Smith, Connor McGovern, Tyler Biadasz, Zach Martin, and Terrence Steele. So quite a downgrade. And now without, Tyron Smith, Connor Williams, La'el Collins of last year, now you have rookies. You have unproven guys out there. So it's going to be a challenge. And for me, the number one question mark on this team is by far the offensive line. I just got to hope, honestly. I don't have any expectations. I just hoping that they can get through it. Tyron Smith is going to be gone for a while. Nothing you can do about that. No more La'el Collins, no more Connor Williams. This is going to be interesting, and I think is going to be really the make or break of this team. If the offensive line impresses, if Tyler Smith plays well, if Connor McGovern plays well, if Terrence Steele improves, takes another step forward, Tyler Biadasz improves, you're asking for a lot. You're banking on a lot on the offensive line. Zach Martin is your only consistent piece, and man, I hope he stays healthy, or else it's going to be interesting for sure. So that's definitely the number one question mark for me. Hoping for the best, but we'll see. So as for the defensive line, you have a lot of bodies. At edge, all of Terrell Basham, Dorrance Armstrong was making this team always, but Dante Fowler. A lot of guys are on this spot, of course, with DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons playing that edge rusher role. You have a lot of bodies, so it'll be interesting exactly to see how the playing time is dispersed. But you're very deep at edge and defensive tackle for that matter. Neville Gallimore, Oso Digizua, Tristan Hill, John Ridgway all made this team. Quentin Bohanna made this team. Carlos Watkins is still on the practice squad, so you're very deep. You have a lot of options, which is good. Not a lot of high-end talent at defensive tackle, but a lot of guys who I think are ready to take that next step forward. And I think we'll really be, I'll be really interested to see what they're able to do. So, moving on, linebackers. Luke Gifford made the team. Damone Clark will be on the NFI list, and I am Devin Harper, also on this team at linebacker. Obviously, Anthony Barr, Leighton Vander Esch, and Micah Parsons were your locks. So a good, deep, and I think great depth at the linebacker position. Cornerback, it's a whole hodgepodge of players. Obviously, the guys you'd expect. I'm not going to mention all of them, but Deron Bland made this roster. He had a great offseason, great preseason, outplayed the likes of both Nashawn Wright and Kelvin Joseph, who are also on this team, but really, I think will be more of depth options at this point. A lot of people were thinking, Kelvin Joseph, cornerback 2 this year. That's not going to happen. I think right now he's sitting at cornerback 5, 4 at best. So it's going to be interesting to see what those two are able to do as the season goes on. But both just were not good at all in the preseason, especially struggles by Nashawn Wright. Safety, you are very deep. Marquise Bell, the undrafted free agent, another one of those. I think a historic number of undrafted free agents made it. Not historic, but the most I've seen in quite a while. I think there were 5, if I'm not mistaken. He had a great offseason as well. He's a good player. He looks like a sort of starter pack Jaron Kearse, in my opinion. I think has a chance to develop and at minimum be a good depth option. Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker, and Jaron Kearse round out the rest of them. I don't think Israel Mukuamu, I think, also made this team. He was a question mark, but I'm looking here. Yeah, I think he is on the active roster. So deep at safety, he was my preseason player of the preseason MVP for me. He was awesome. I loved what I saw from him, and I hope he can continue to develop and hopefully be a good safety on this team. So as for the specialists, you have Brian Anger and no one else on the roster currently. Or not currently, but as the roster cuts first came out, Jake McQuaid and CJ Goodwin were released. Again, that was a procedural move. They have been signed back. So you do have a long snapper and a special teamer. Don't worry about that. So Brett Maher at kicker is still the only sort of question mark. He's on the practice squad, but again, will be elevated as week 1 comes closer. So that's about it for the roster. I'm looking here, just want to make sure I have everything. All right, one more thing. I want to talk about the number changes. There are just a few number changes for the Cowboys. This always happens around this time of year. It's just players get released, numbers come open, and you don't want tight ends in the 40s anymore once we get to the regular season. So I have them all here. Anthony Barr went from 51 to 42. Don't really love that. Kind of a downgrade in my opinion. I like linebackers in the 50s, and kind of that's it for me. It's all right. Doesn't matter to me. Except for Micah Parsons and Jabril Cox. Like those teen numbers, it's kind of cool. But 40s, it's all right. I think I liked 51 better. Deron Bland, also don't love this. I guess I got used to seeing him in 30. He'll wear 26. Not my favorite number for a corner. I mean, just 26 just doesn't have the flow that I like, but it's all right. Jake Ferguson, huge W, all the way from 49 to 80 or 48 to 87. Much better. That's a tight end number. 48 is not. Same thing with Peyton Hendershot. He'll go from 49 to 89. So 2 massive upgrades there. Dennis Houston, in 3, I like the number, but obviously that's Anthony Brown. In the offseason, preseason, you get multiple numbers. So just know that that does have to change. Dennis Houston will wear 17. Nice number there. Malik Jefferson will just go from 45 to 46. I'm not really sure why there, but it's fine, I guess. And then KaVontae Turpin is an interesting one. It could be the new number 9 in town, but it's not really confirmed. The thought is 9 or 16. I don't know if that's maybe barring a Tony Romo approval, but I'd look to see. I mean, the initial reports were 9, and that would look, I think, way cooler. But at the same time, that's kind of Tony's number. I can understand the conflict there. So let me know. What number would you rather see? Because we're not really sure yet. So for KaVontae Turpin, 9 or 16? Yeah, so I think 9 is a much better looking number, but again, so just let me know in the comments. Would you rather 9 or 16 for KaVontae Turpin? Let's see. Matt Waletzko, also a change. He went from 71 to 79. Jason Peters will take 71, the number he's used for pretty much, I think, all of his career. So just a sort of veteran takes that number there. So that's it for the number changes, and that is it for the roster. Let me know who your biggest surprise was, the surprise cut for you. For me, not a lot of surprises. I thought it went about how I'd expect it to. Some of the guys like Carlos Watkins, maybe Malik Davis, a little bit, surprising. But they're back on the practice squad, so not a concern to me. I did not expect, however, for all of the quarterbacks to be cut. Again, they've been brought back, so, no big deal there. But definitely a little bit of a different situation. Let me know if that freaked you out a little bit. I figured it was a procedural move, but definitely a strange one for sure. So that's about it. I want to sort of preview the Cowboys-Bucks game. This video is getting a little bit long. I'm looking at the time. I kind of expected that, but so I'll just real quick talk about my highlights for the game. I mentioned the offensive line. I think that's going to be huge. That's going to be the make or break, not just for the Bucks game, but for this entire season. The offensive line play, it's got to play okay at least, It's just got to not be a disaster, and hopefully Dak and the rest of the offense can make up the rest. The other thing is wide receiver. The two, I think, thinnest. I mean, not thin, but positions that underwent the biggest changes from this year to last year. You went from a very good offensive line last year, one of the best, I think, talent-wise. They didn't always perform the best. Same thing with the wide receiver crew, and now you have a lot of uncertainties. I mean, CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert, Noah Brown. I don't know. So it's going to be interesting for sure. I talked about that. I'm not going to spend too much time, but just it's going to be interesting to see what the Cowboys can do at those two positions. They chose to let go of guys like La'el Collins, of Connor Williams, Cedric Wilson, Amari Cooper. These are all key losses, and I'm really curious to see how it affects them week 1. I think it's going to take quite a bit of adjusting to see how the young guys can perform and hopefully step in and, fill that role to the best of their ability at least. So it's definitely going to be interesting, but I do want to talk briefly about injuries too. I kind of missed that. Michael Gallup is not really sure. He's been ruled just about out for week 1. He ruled himself out, and that's just, it wasn't realistic ever. But I mean, he tore his ACL in December, I think. So for me, I'm thinking, at the end of last year, shoot, he's going to miss at least the first half of this season. But his recovery's been incredible. I mean, I was listening to The Fan earlier today. Jerry Jones spoke on it and how pleased he is. And I mean, how pleased everyone should be. Michael Gallup, I'm thinking he's going to miss most of this year, at least half of it, right? But he might only miss a week or two. It's going to be interesting. No clear timetable has been set, but he was not placed on injured reserve, so that's huge. I believe that injured reserve, you have to miss 3 weeks. I think, don't quote me on that, but he was not placed on the injured reserve. He was not placed on the PUP list. So those are, I believe, the PUP list is 4 weeks. I know that. Injured reserve at this point, I think, is 3 weeks again. So they're thinking he's not missing 3 or 4 weeks. Are we saying he's going to be back week 3, week 2? Let me know when you think Michael Gallup's going to be back. I don't want it to be rushed for sure, but if he can get back before week 4, even just I'll put it there, I am extremely pleased, and I, obviously hope that the other wide receivers can step in till then. But I think this is really a great scenario considering, he's coming off an ACL tear. And I just hope that he has enough time to recover and is able to play well, and is not restricted, obviously, by the injury. James Washington, the other wide receiver, was signed to kind of be your guy before, Michael Gallup was recovering. He obviously got hurt himself. He broke his foot in training camp, and he's going to be missing at least, I'd say, probably half the season. I think maybe after the bye week 8, 9-ish, around there is probably what you'd be expecting for him. But again, now that I think about it, he was injured quite a few weeks ago. It was before the preseason started, so maybe honestly not that far. I think the initial expectation was 8 to 10 weeks, and just considering that did happen a month ago, so no clear timetable for him, but maybe sooner or later, obviously, hopefully. But he has been placed on injured reserve, so is not taking up a roster spot. Same thing with Tyron Smith. He is out till at least December, is what the initial reports are saying, with that torn hamstring off the bone, gruesome sounding injury. I'm just hoping for him the best and hoping that he can come back. Whether or not it's this year, I'm just hoping he is going to be back long term. And I think that's a big question mark. I love Tyron Smith, and it's hard for me to let go of players, veteran players. I mean, he's your, I think, longest tenured player on this team, has been around since 2010. And it's just tough to see guys like that get older, And especially in his case, not even that old. I think he's 31. Fun fact here, this is very interesting. I don't know if you know this, but he is actually younger than Zach Martin. But the wear and tear over the years, he came into the league at age 20, and it's been apparent. He's been missing games every single year, and I think it's something we've learned to live with, because it's been, 3 games, I think, has been kind of the consistent number that's sort of grown in the past few years. But half the season with Tyron Smith is a lot better than, most players in the league. He's still a top 3 tackle when healthy, but he hasn't been healthy. I wonder if this is his last year as a Dallas Cowboy, and I think that's really going to depend on the play of Tyler Smith. If he goes out and balls out at left tackle, the Cowboys are going to have to make that tough decision. If not, maybe not. Maybe they want to have him get comfortable at left guard, bring Tyron Smith back, and it's been clear. Jerry's made it clear that he is hoping that he can come back this season, and I think he will. Come playoff time, I think he'll probably be ready, but it's just beyond that for me. Is he going to retire? Is he going to keep playing? Again, he's only 31, and it's hard to think of it like that, considering Jason Peters is 40. But you can't convince me that Tyron Smith has 9 more NFL seasons left in him. The wear and tear has just been extreme over his career. He is a future Hall of Famer. He is an incredible player when healthy, but that's a big if for him, the health. And I hope he can stay. I hope he plays till the wheels come off, but that's going to be the biggest question. And I'll ask you guys, have the wheels come off? How close? How much time does Tyron Smith, man, I'm confusing the names today, I'm sorry, Tyron Smith have left in him? Let me know. Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Is it this year? Let me know. So that's going to be definitely a thing to watch, Tyron Smith and his health. So before this video gets to be half an hour, I guess I'll go ahead and let you guys go. Thanks again for watching, especially if you made it through. Type in real one in the comments, because you are a real one. So thanks so much for watching. Thanks again just for making it through the offseason with me. We're going to be seeing some real football very, very soon, and I just can't wait. So lots of uncertainties this year, lots of craziness in the offseason, but it's time to put that aside and just play football. So I'm excited. Thanks again for watching, and go Cowboys.